Good morning, dear attendees. I welcome you to webinar on the Norwegian construction industry. My name is Evita Nedvedske, and I am head of LIA office in Norway. And today I want to kick off with a very special and 100 years old quote written by Latvian writer Rainis, and he says, "The one who changes endures." Or in Latvian, pastāvēs, kas pārvērtīsies. And recently I read an excellent paraphrase by Uldis Pīlēns, transforming this very same quote for 21st century, writing in his book, and I quote, "The one who is not able to sense and adjust to the changing complexity of the world vanishes." And today, in almost a year anniversary with rapidly changing world in pandemia, let us find out what is changing, what is remaining, and what is vanishing in the construction industry in Norway. And it is a really great pleasure of mine to welcome two fantastic experts joining us today from their home offices in Norway, Petter Sørstad Eriksen and Per Vinje, both lawyers and partners at company Hammervoll Pinn. Webinar consists of two parts. First, a presentation, and the second part will be Q&A. So please write your questions to Per and Petter here in chat. So, okay, without further ado, I give a digital mic to Per and Petter. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evita, and thank you for the possibility to come and speak to all of you this morning. It's a little bit earlier in Norway than in Latvia. As Evita said, we have a presentation for you. It's roughly split into two parts. First, we thought we would give you a general overview of the economic situation in Norway and the impact of COVID as of today, and then we thought we'd take a closer look at the situation in construction and property sectors given the COVID-19 situation. And my colleague Per here is organizing the slides for me, as we're not at the same place physically. You will have to.
I'll try to do my best and make sure that we follow the track.
There you have the subjects that I told you about. Just a short presentation. As Rita said, we are both partners in Hammervoll Pinn, which is a medium-sized firm in Norway. I am the head of the construction law department, and Per is the head of property market and has also been working in the property business for many years. Just a short introduction of our firms. As you can see, the background picture there is taken from the roof of the Origo project in Riga when that was under construction. I think that some of you might recognize the buildings in the picture. I thought that was a nice start for the day for you. We in Hammervoll Pinn are about 45 lawyers, a total of 65 employees. Most of us have extensive experience in construction law and related areas. We also give full service on corporate and other areas of law, employment law, for instance. We have background from some of Norway's biggest businesses as well. We have partners who have served in Equinor, former Statoil. And we assist both small construction businesses, property businesses, and large entities, also some international entities. And we have an annual turnover of about 100 million Norwegian kroners. I thought it might be interesting for you to see also where we are located. You can see the southern part of Norway here. We have our office where Per and I are situated in Oslo, and then we have an office in Stavanger, which is on the low left side of the photo, and an office in Bergen. And Stavanger, as you know, is the oil and offshore capital of Norway, and Bergen is the traditional shipping capital. So we have a lot of maritime industry clients as well. And of course, most importantly, we are proud members of the Norwegian Chamber of Commerce in Latvia, and have had the pleasure of being guests in Riga at several occasions. You can also see when you get the presentation later, which you will receive in an email from Vita and her colleagues, more about what we can assist with. But as you can see here, we are a full-scale service firm when it comes to construction.
We also support our clients in all the property problems you can end up in, from buying a property all the way through the sales situation and the problems regarding that. At the moment, we are meeting some real estate development problems based on the municipalities' questions for supporting building supporting systems, which makes new builders struggle to understand what is going on. So at the moment, if you're starting a larger or a part of a larger construction situation, at least in Oslo and the central areas of Norway, you will meet some new situations that also the ones that have been there a long time is meeting and are looking into. So we are at the moment doing several cases on this against the municipalities.
Okay, let's start on the overview of the impact of the corona situation. If some of you participated in the Chamber of Commerce webinar that Per and I had this autumn in September, you can recognize this front page. This is a front page of the largest Norwegian newspaper about a year ago now, on March 15th, 2020. Full-scale crisis mode. And the question is, where are we 11 months later? Well, we have experienced 2 waves of infections in Norway. And the first shutdown was eased during the summer, and we thought that during the autumn things would get back to more to normal. And when we had the seminar in September, we were cautiously optimistic. But then in October, we had a second wave, and since then, just to illustrate, Per and I and most office workers in Oslo have been in our home offices since November. And now we have the mutations as well. So most of Oslo has been shut down, and there has been a lot of shutdown in the other large cities as well. And I will get back to how this has impacted the construction, ongoing construction.
And as you see of the slides in front of you, this is the recent numbers on the COVID situation, both the number of tested and the number of, all the way down to the number of deaths. And what we see is a very small number of deaths at the moment, We are looking at somewhere like 2 to 3 deaths a day, not more than that, but we have a relatively large number of tested persons, and vaccination has started wide. We will come back to the vaccination numbers later on. I thought it was would be interesting to look at what has this done with the Norwegian economy. So I looked into the number of employees in the construction companies for the last 3 quarters. And as you can see, there is a decrease in population, but the decrease is slowly stopping up in the 4th quarter. What we have seen in the first weeks of January and now seen in January and the first weeks of February is closing of the Norwegian border, which has made it difficult to get into Norway for foreign employees. And this has made this number probably decrease quite a bit for at least the first month. It is looking quite much better at the moment, and we are hoping for an opening of the borders in 2nd week of March, I think. There was a press conference yesterday which where the government addressed the situation of the border closing and the closing of the areas around Oslo. If we look at the second number here, you can see that the number of hourly hours done by the employees in the same quarters, and as you can see, it is actually rising. So the employees that has been on the work sites has been working more, and this makes the quite a big contribution in the GDP, which hasn't fallen as much as we expected. And as you see the last here, you can see the GDP numbers. And we are actually seeing something quite special in Norway. We are seeing a reduction in the economic as a total, but a price rise on the consumer goods. So we are actually looking at something which is going to be quite demanding in when the crisis is ended. We are going to have a gap between the pricing and the amount of money that is in the system. When we come to the vaccination situation at the moment, we have by 15th of February, there is 220,000 people in Norway vaccinated with the first dose of a vaccine, and approximately 100,000 which is vaccinated with two doses of vaccine. And it is rising quite rapidly at the moment. Norway is receiving approximately 60,000 doses of vaccine a week, which is quite low, but are increasing because we are meeting delivery of the first 1-dose vaccines within 2 or 3 weeks, I think. The right slide here, right part of the slide here is showing the national health systems vaccine prognosis in time, which actually is pointing at completion of vaccination for the persons which is older than 44 years before summer. This is the not the most optimistic view, but this is the standard view that they have made. Peter?
Yes, as Per mentioned earlier, the borders were closed as of January 29th for all non-Norwegian workers. There had been a ongoing discussion in Norway for about half a year about whether or not what we call imported infection should be tackled on a tougher basis. And this was the result, because at this time we also had a lot of mutated viruses popping up around Oslo, which led to the closing down of almost everything in an area around Oslo. So as of January 29th, and as far as we know, until February 28th, but as Per said yesterday, it might be prolonged until second week in March. Non-Norwegian workers not residing in Norway are not allowed to enter the country. And non-Norwegian workers already in the country can, of course, then not go home and come back again. This has resulted in a very great number of workers continuing to work, even though they had the right to go home. So this has helped some. But many Norwegian businesses rely heavily on non-Norwegian workers. Of course, the construction business is what's most interesting for you, but also the fishing industry, which is at the peak right now in the north of Norway, and many other industries rely on foreign workers. So myself, I am now handling a lot of clients who have not the possibility of conducting their construction work because their workers were at home in other countries. So this is quite a challenge, and I think that the government will work to ease those restrictions as soon as possible because of the impact that it has on the Norwegian economy. Yes. Restrictions on the building sites. This is also an ongoing discussion. We were very afraid that everything would be shut down in March last year, and there was a real shudder going through the entire construction business. But the Norwegian construction business has shown to be very resilient. So all the ongoing construction projects that I had a hand in and that I know of continued through 2020, and the construction companies have been very good at implementing measures to tackle the COVID crisis, and also the government is very strict on the rules. The strictest rules right now, or until now, has been in Bergen, because there was an outbreak there a few weeks ago, and in which workers could only work at one construction site at a time. And of course, you know that this might be a problem for a lot of skilled workers who sometimes shuttle back and forth between work sites. So that has represented a problem, but the rest of the country, it has worked out quite well. So at the beginning, we had a lot of force majeure or acts of God notices being sent. But as of right now, things are progressing steadily, but of course, somewhat hampered by the measures. Just to give you a bigger picture look at Norway, the types of businesses that have suffered most, I I assume are similar with the rest of Europe and Latvia as well, is the travel and transportation and air travel industry. The Norwegian air carrier Norwegian has been balancing on the edge of bankruptcy now for several months. It's hit them hard, same as with restaurants and travel everywhere in Norway. Restaurants in Oslo, for instance, haven't been able to serve alcohol for many months. And they have had massive losses. Next one. This slide was originally prepared for the September webinar that we had. And you can see that there was a large reduction in revenue for the travel and transportation industries. But at this time, things looked brighter. So things were going better. But as I told you earlier on, we had the second wave and then things were shut down again.
As of November, everything shut down, and there is hasn't been served a beer in Oslo since the 15th of November, I think. So you can think what happened with all those businesses.
Yes. So the question then is, and of course, perhaps what you're most interested in is what's on the horizon. This photo is of Oslo, and the two towers that you see in the middle there is Oslo City Hall. If this had been a panoramic view, you would have seen cranes building projects all over. And that was the situation when we had a visit from the Chamber of Commerce in the autumn of 2019. And it's Per's finger there that you can see showing the representative, all the construction projects. So we'll see what's on the future now is perhaps a little different.
Yes.
Yeah. This was, there is an institution in Norway called, or a magazine actually called Big Fakta, Building Facts. And they make reports, very good reports. And in September 2020, they issued this report, which says it's trends for the building industry. And this sums up that many projects were delayed in the second quarter of 2020, which means that the ongoing projects went on, but a lot of planned projects were delayed. And what we're seeing now is that this trend has continued and increased. What we also saw already in September was that a lot of large construction projects went on as before, but the smaller projects were affected. And that is because of course, about uncertainty about the economic future. And the rate of initiation of new projects has continued to slow down. But in September, as you can see on the last point there, bullet point, the overall conclusion was that it was the construction sector is coping well in a different year. But with the second shutdown, I think that we have to adjust that conclusion, even though things are going okay. I think that the prospects didn't quite hit home.
One of the problems with wave number 2 is, it has been that the municipalities and the building offices in the municipalities has had their home office disadvantage quite largely. So many projects which was close to getting their building permit hasn't received it based on the situation that the workers in the municipality hasn't been at work or hasn't been able to arrange the meetings that is necessary to make the decisions.
That's a very interesting thing that you're pointing out there, Per, because it shows that there's not only the economic impact here and the uncertainties, but also the practical implications of COVID-19.
One of the situation that has worked well in the past in Norway is that if you have a problem as a builder or as a owner of a property that is being reorganized, you have had the possibility to go to the municipality and ask for advice. There is open hours in the municipality building office to ask for advice. What can I do? Where is the borders for what is legal? When do I have to enter into a new building code or so and so on? This hasn't been a possibility since 15th of November. And isn't going to open probably not before end of March as we see it.
The same institution that issued the report on the last slide made a new report at the end of 2020 called This is how 2021 will be. And as you can see, they have adjusted their estimates, and it says there that as many as 45% of the planned projects which had received permits might be cancelled in 2021. This is estimates, it's not concrete numbers. But what is a concrete number is the next one, which shows that the numbers of projects that were initiated in 2019 was 11,000, and in 2020 it was 3,300. And the estimates for number of projects in 2021 is 6,400, but that is before any cancellations. And as you see from the graph there at the bottom of the page, the black one indicates the number of projects initiated if there is a 45% cancellation, and the entire solid graph shows without cancellations. But there is a difference between value and number of projects, and we see that the highest value construction projects are less often cancelled. This also is impacted by the fact that there has been an effort on the government and municipalities to push forward their construction projects. The Federation of Norwegian Construction Industries actually published a report just this week where they conducted a survey from their members, and the articles that presented it was called Dark Skies Over 2021, More Positivity About 2022. The survey was conducted in January 2021, and it shows that there's a wide span within the construction community on how they look at the future. Next one. The main summary of the findings is that the construction companies have a lower expectation towards their own economy in January 2021 than they had in 2020, which I expect this to be expected. But the majority believes that the Norwegian economy will improve this year, and only 12% believe that they will end up with a deficit or lower earnings in 2021. Even though a lot of, or naturally a lot of companies were stress tested last year when it comes to their economy, so more companies will be at risk if we don't have an improvement in the economic situation in 2021 than in 2020. But the positive news is that 40% of the companies have the same influx of orders as last year, and 29% only have a lower influx of orders. And I will show you a graph on the next slide in a little bit, which shows you the variation in the feedback on this question. Another thing to notice is that COVID-19 has resulted in a lot of companies digitizing greatly, and there's a strong push now for companies in Norway, construction companies and buildings companies, to digitize in order to have a more effective process and save money. Here you can see the graph. You can see that the largest blue in the middle of the graph shows the number of companies that had approximately the same influx of orders in 2020 as in 2019. That's good news. And you can also see the rise on the left, which shows companies with an increase of orders from 10% and above. And you have about 25% reduction for only 6 or 7% of the companies. And most of the companies on the right-hand side of the largest indicator has had a reduction between 0 and 25%. So overall, not as bad as we expected. And here's the last graph from that survey. It shows that only 11% of the companies expect to end up with a deficit in 2021.
An interesting number. There are 3 different graphs that you could look into if you're interested in how the normal people look at how the economy works. The first one, and the funny one, is the Big Mac index, which is an index made out of what people expect to pay for their Big Mac at McDonald's. That's a known index that everybody points at, and the normal number is based on how many hours you have to work to buy a Big Mac. But there is also a side scale of that index is what people expect is going to happen with the Big Mac index in the coming year. And if you look at that index for Norway, people are expecting the Big Mac to be more expensive the next year because they're expecting to have to earn more money. The other index that I would like to point out at this number is the healthcare index, which the Norwegian Housing Authority is making, where they are addressing where can a normal healthcare worker buy a property. And they gave their numbers earlier this month. And ended up with the situation that in the Oslo area, a single healthcare worker will be able to buy approximately 2.4% of the properties that are offered in the market. And it has been decreasing quite rapidly the last years. And the expectation is that it's going to drop even further. So this is showing that the expectation on the normal house owners' hand is that the house prices is going to rise even further. And the last number is the number of new builds that are started, new housing that are started. And that number has been decreasing the last 3 years of several numbers. And there is at the moment a situation where you won't be able to buy a new built square meter in the Oslo area unless you're paying approximately 96,000 kroner a square meter. And there's never been as high based on the normal salary.
I will just move a little bit faster through the next slides because I am.
I see that we have used quite a bit of the time.
Yes, just to highlight, the central bank has kept the interest rate unchanged in January as well. It's at 0%, and the most important indicator of any growth in the economy in 2021 is that the vaccination program is successful. Next. I think also we can move beyond this one page. Just also the OECD economic outlook for December 2020 predicts that the Norwegian land-based GDP will be back to pre-pandemic levels at the end of 2021. But of course, this also depends on a successful vaccination run. What's interesting is that the OECD says that Norway was well positioned to handle the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic because of high level of taxation, a large public sector, and a big sovereign wealth fund, as you can see. As you see from the graphs on the right, I'm sorry, you can see that the graph on the right-hand side shows the unemployment, which has been reduced, but is still higher than the pre-crisis levels. And the graph on the left-hand side shows the pre-crisis growth of the GDP in the blue line and the current growth path in the red line. And this also shows the unemployment, which still is high, but is going down. The Confederation of Norwegian Enterprises, they are cautiously optimistic, and they think that the private spending will help the economy recover if society opens up by summer 2021, which again shows how important the vaccination is. I can also point out just that the government has so far used about 41 billion euros from the sovereign wealth fund. Danske Bank is one of the largest banks in Norway. And in a feature article in January, the head of Danske Bank said that he believed that the Norwegian GDP could increase by 3.7% at least, again, if the vaccination is successful.
The possibilities that is lying in the unfilled need for new housing. As I said earlier, the house prices has risen significantly during the last years, and we ended up with an increase in house pricing in 2020 that nobody believed when we saw what happened in March. But what Norwegians did, they didn't stay at home and expected everything to go bad. They went out and bought themselves a new house and or a new flat, and this has made prices rise on a total on 6.7%, and in the central areas such as Oslo, as high as 9.7%.
Yes, I think we can just sum up that this slide shows that experts are expecting a shock in the housing prices, and it shows what Per just said. So if we move on to the next slide, Per, and the next slide as well, you can see what's the status now of building projects. This is from Statistics Norway, which is the official statistics bureau. It shows actually a decline in new building permissions of 12.5% from January 2020 to January 2021. So in the last couple of months, there has been a decrease in new approved projects. This is for dwellings. And when you then see the need for dwellings and the property prices, you can see where there is a possibility for Latvian companies as well. And I know that a lot of companies from the Baltics are supplying Norwegian house builders, and that market will only increase in the years to come. Next slide. We can also see from Statistics Norway the quarterly numbers, and then you can see a bit of positive news, because if you compare the fourth quarter of 2019 with 2020, there was an increase in building permissions of 21.4%, but this is building permissions, which is not initiated projects. So you have to hold this up against what we have said about the initiation of projects. But this shows that there is a large sum of projects lying there waiting for the investors to feel comfortable in starting up projects. So if we are lucky, there will become a sort of a wave when the economy gets back to normal. Okay. Next slide. The first thing was homes. Holiday homes has been the real big thing in Norway this year. Experts are predicting another record year, is what it says in Norwegian there. And as a matter of fact, to prove the point, that photo is from my own holiday home in the mountains. So
this is what you look out of from where you are at the moment.
Yes, this is where people want to be now. So next slide, Per. And for those of you who don't understandably know that much about where people have built holiday homes in Norway, this is a short overview of the 10th largest areas of holiday homes and skiing resorts. And you can see that the most popular areas have had a sales growth of 68% this year. And some of these few sites have even had a growth of over 100%. And what's interesting for you perhaps is that also in Norway for the first time, the sale of holiday homes as apartments was significant. And you can see Oppdal, which is here, has had an increase in prices in 58%. And Hemsedal, which is about here, has had an increase in 42%. So you can see that there is a very big market for deliveries to the holiday home.
And what we also have seen is that the owners of holiday homes are using quite a large sum of money to redo their existing holiday homes. So there is quite a large market for rebuilds as well.
I think we can skip one further, Per.
This one?
No, the
previous. The one, previous one. This one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You can see that in some areas the price of a holiday home is actually higher per square meter than a similar home, and that the standard that is expected is also rising. So what Per said about refurbishment of holiday homes is a big business right now.
Okay, just say something about the sizing of a holiday home. During the last 10 years, the size of a standard holiday home has risen from approximately 60 square meters to around 100 square meters, and is still rising. And we see that the large skiing resorts, they are building holiday homes with standards, as Peter said, which is actually a lot higher than what people have in their normal homes.
Just to give you some numbers to go with those reflections, the registry office registered 14,700 transactions of holiday homes in 2020, which is an increase on 26%. You can see that from the graph on the right-hand side there. And as I said earlier, holiday apartments as well had gone up markedly with an increase of 24% in 2020. The average price of a holiday cabin is 2.3 million, but a lot of cabins are much more expensive than that, and especially those high up in the mountains. The total value of holiday homes transactions in 2020 in Norway was 33.9 billion. So that's a large market. And most interesting for you perhaps is that most of the reserves of holiday homes and the projects that were already ongoing have now been depleted because of the sales in 2020. So there will be, if this continues, a huge surge in the need for more building materials, more people, more infrastructure.
Okay. Okay, what the Norwegian government did when the crisis struck was that they started to pour money into infrastructure, and in the budget for 2021 they put in 32.1 billion just to do railroad processes in 2021. So there's a large number of processes started on railroad situation. They also put 36 billion in road purpose and road areas, and they put as much money as they could in hospital rebuilds. And this is quite difficult when the hospitals are supposed to be filled up with COVID patients, which they're not, by the way, but they're supposed to. But they also put in the budget for 2021, 2.4 billion to build a new Viking museum here in Oslo, and a stimulation pack for museums by 2.3 billion. And all these 2.3 billion are spread out on each of the museums in Norway. So every museum that you contact has received quite a large sum of money to do reconstruction.
This is just an overview to help you when you get the presentation later, to see where you can find information about government projects. Also, green projects. The Norwegian government is pushing heavily for the green change. So the rollout of construction of wind power has been significant over the last year. It's quite controversial in Norway, but it's still ongoing. And it has had the most significant growth of all the green power sources, with an increase of 79% from 2019 to 2020. And Norway is still quite a lot of way behind the leading nations in Europe when it comes to wind power. So this is one of the areas in which there will be possibilities for investors or construction companies in Norway. Also, wood as a construction material is now being considered as a good option to concrete due to the climate situation. This is a photo of the highest wood construction in the world, which is placed in a small town about an hour and a half north of Norway. It's sort of a beacon for using wood in construction in Norway, and wood is now the hottest thing that you can put both inside and outside and into the construction of the buildings.
Okay, we come to the possibilities and the commercial properties in the end of this. The pricing of commercial properties as an investment situation. At the moment, we see a pricing which has probably, or you could expect, had stopped. But what we actually see is quite a large interest in buying commercial properties in Norway. The pricing with a yield of 3.25 in the best areas in Oslo. And we have actually in January this year seen the first ever transaction in Norway below 3.0. It was put 2.97 in the center of Oslo. It's not official yet which property it is, but both the seller, which bought it back in 2001, and the buyer, which is a foreign wealth fund, are going out with the information next week. Was the last when I spoke to the seller.
Just to point out there, Per, that when you're mentioning these things, PropTech is very a great thing in Norway now as well, and the refurbishment of all these commercial properties that's going to take place, PropTech is a central and vital part.
Definitely. The transaction volume, 109 billion, that excludes the sale of Entra stocks, which the Norwegian government sold their part in November, which if you put in the Entra sale as well, it's 25 billion higher. You could ask the question, has the Home Office changed the office market? And the three largest commercial real estate agents in Norway asked their clients what's happening with the post-corona office. 50% of the businesses that answered that their expectation was to use the same number of square meters after Corona. 30% expected to use more. Only 10% expected to save money based on that people were save space based on that people were using home office. But the main answer was that the tenants were expected to redo their offices within the lease period, so it fitted more to new forms of usage. They're expecting to build more small closed spaces, not offices maybe, but at least small spaces where people can shut themselves off. So there is the situation that we are on home office isn't making the office go away. Yeah, as I said, there are quite a high willingness to interest to invest in commercial properties. And the foreign investors are still looking at Norway as a safe haven. At the end here, we'll just look at some interesting numbers because everybody is expecting a break or a slowdown in the consumer usage. But I found some numbers late last night that interested me. If you see the lower left, the lower right column here is an interesting number. Expected living age adjustment. And I took two of the municipalities close to Oslo. Time from 2020 to 2050 is going to go from 85 years of age as an expected living for a woman in 2020 to 19.5 in 2050. This looks like an interesting number if you just look at it like that. But these numbers if it's the same all the way around Norway, is going to increase the number of Norwegians by close to 1.6 million Norwegians in Norwegian inhabitants in 2050. So there is going to be built quite a lot of living quarters to house them or stack them in if you want to. This is the number of schools and the number of people in schools and the school investments. You can look at that if you're interested. And then we will go to the Q&A. Okay?
Yes, so perfect. Thank you so much, Per and Petter, for a very insightful economic outlook in Norway and the impact of COVID-19 and of course overview of construction industry. So yeah, let us continue with the Q&A. And our webinar participants sent questions also when signing up for the event. And the most frequently asked question was, so Latvian producer wants to get a new expert client in Norway. And the question is how to reach out to the Norwegians and gain their trust when travel is not possible, as we heard from you. And knowing that you have clients from the buyer side in Norway. So what's your take on that? How to succeed now in Norway?
Well, to succeed in Norway at the moment, you have to go through the channels of already existing contacts, either by people you know in the industry locally, or through the if you, for instance, was delivering pre-built wooden housing and was hoping to sell to one of the skiing resort areas, I would address the local municipalities in those areas and ask them who is building at your site. We could help the ones that wanted to address this in those areas. I would also look into which small or medium building companies has increased their revenue the last years. This is open information in Norway. You can easily go in and see who has done this and in which areas. Petter, do you have a different solution?
No, I think it's just we have to recognize that it is difficult now for a little while. But also I could add, you can also use the connections if you have them through the Chamber of Commerce, which is quite active. And also you can always contact us as well. But I think that until travel is opened up later this year, there are few channels that you can use. And of course, it's easiest for the large Norwegian construction companies to use someone that they have previously used. But then if you have contacts, I know that there are a lot of companies that delivers one sort of service or product to Norway. So some sort of national brotherly love might be necessary here, and to contact some of your fellow Latvian companies if they are operating in Norway and can vouch for you and give you contacts. That would be a good thing right now, I think. And of course, when the epidemic slows down, you're welcome to come to Norway, and we can help you meet also people here in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce and you, of course, a bit.
Thank you. Thank you. Another quite common question, practical one from our participants sent prior to the event was export of doors and windows to Norway from Latvia. What are the main factors to succeed with this product in Norway? What would be your take on that?
I think that the most important thing is to land contracts with some of the big construction companies or property developers. If they use your products in their construction, then you have reference projects which will help you reach perhaps a larger amount of customers. But of course, there are examples of other approaches as well. But I think that's the main, the best approach. It's not easy, but it's the best approach.
And what is, in your opinion, a better way to approach those larger construction companies that could be good clients for Latvian producer? Is it okay to just give a call, send an email, or try to reach out through some digital tools?
Well, I think everything is okay, because the large construction companies and building producers and property developers, they're always looking for a good deal, and they're always looking for quality products. So I would reach out in the manner that you have available to you. But normally this would be done through trade shows, you know, and meeting people physically. But today, yes, I don't think anyone would react negatively to a polite approach.
Mm-hmm. Per, do you have something to add regarding this communication and first steps that sometimes is the hardest part of making connections in Norway?
To get a delivery in the first project, it's always difficult, but what is actually the areas where you could get your projects or your products in quite easily is to address the architects and the architects' media. They are actually always looking for new ways to put things in perspective. So there is at the moment approximately 150 architect firms in Oslo. There are mainly either quite large or the typical 3-person firm. I would look at the 3-person firms and look which of these companies has larger projects. Like there are some areas which is built up with 100 or 200 homes in a period of time with one architect. If they put your product in, you have a big and good opening.
Great. Thank you for very practical tips for our companies. I see that we're a bit over the time limit, but I think we can take 2 more questions for today. And continuing with more on expert note, we have a question: how open are Norwegian companies for construction materials from Latvia?
They're craving for it, actually. One of the larger problems has been delivery of products or construction products, all from concrete to wooden products are actually in demand at the moment. So you will actually meet a quite open door at most of the companies, I think.
That's it. You have anything to add on this?
I think that's good advice, and especially the holiday home sector, which I know has been a big market for Latvian and Baltic companies earlier. There are now a lot of the cabins that are being built are prefabricated. So.
And to wrap up our Q&A session, we have a question to comment on Norwegian companies' interest in acquiring services abroad while they are receiving government subsidies. Don't you observe protectionism in the market? And how big is the competition in the construction market now? What could be the main selling points for Latvian companies? Price, quality?
It's a difficult question, but I personally haven't registered any protectionism when it comes to materials. It has perhaps become an issue that you should be less dependent on foreign workers, but not import of materials or other services. So I think that it hasn't changed, and I think that the demand will only increase for Latvian services. And I can add that for as long as I've been going to Latvia, which is about 7 or 8 years now, in the cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce, the big Norwegian companies, construction companies, and henceforth, have always been very interested in what Latvian companies can provide.
I don't think we see any protectionist moves at all at the moment. We are we don't have enough either workmen or materials in Norway to sustain our normal use. So at the moment, I think it's only to get into the market that is the problem, not any protectionist situation at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and knowledge, Petter and Per. So our time is up for today. Thank you everyone for joining the event. So we will upload a webinar video in our LIA YouTube channel, and we will share presentation with all the participants that join us today over an email. So just a friendly reminder that the LIA office in Norway is there for you. So to assist with any questions or help with export to Norway. So thank you once again for joining, and meanwhile, stay healthy and safe. Thank you, everyone.